your just revenue online in general, especially around like Black Friday, because Black Friday, as everyone knows, is our largest period overall in terms of like revenue, in terms of traffic. So I want to make sure that you just don't rely on, just Google, just Facebook, or, sometimes every article for the last 6 months has been like everybody's on Amazon, but everyone isn't on Amazon. And also not everyone is right to be on Amazon, i.e. if you change your product every 6 months, you're probably not a great person to be on Amazon. Because Amazon's great if you've got that like pair of shoes or that really simple bomber jacket that you sell every year and you get tons of reviews on it, but having your product change constantly is always not the best place to go, would be on Amazon. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I am super jazzed and happy to have Brian here from Feedonomics. He's one of the co-founders. I'm going to assume everyone knows who Feedonomics is, but if you don't, they're basically a feed management platform. We do so much more than that, but I'm just going to dumb it down there because Brian will go into more detail when he talks. And then obviously, for those who don't know me, my name is Dwayne. I run an agency up here in Canada called Take Some Risk, and we help clients run paid campaigns. We help clients with a bit of GA and GTM stuff. And now I'm going to hand it over to Brian and let him start. And then at the end, we will take some Q&A. So it's about 45 minutes of talking, give or take, and then we have about 5-10 minutes of Q&A, and then we are done. So thanks everyone for showing up, and Brian, take it away.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for the intro, Dwayne. And I'm really excited to talk about some of the most interesting things that you can do with feeds, in addition to just the normal run-of-the-mill feed optimization, getting into some really, really cool and interesting tactics. Because as you said, the holiday season is coming up, and it's one of the most important times to make sure that not only your campaigns, but also your feeds are up to snuff. And there are some really good tips here that are going to help you get everything in shape for that. Like for the Black 5-day weekend, roughly 25% of all of your sales can happen in 5 days, which is insane. So it's very important to make sure that you don't wait until Thanksgiving to get it all ready and set up. So we'll be going into getting your shopping feed ready, going beyond just the biggest 3 channels that we see, Google, Facebook, and Amazon, and talking about some other interesting channels you can be doing. And then Dwayne's going to be talking about ROAS, or return on ad spend, how to use data to really strategize and build an amazing campaign strategy, and finding your community. And then we'll end it off with a Q&A. So let's get started talking about shopping feeds. One of the things you probably may be wondering is, what is a feed, right? That's a pretty important question if we're going to be talking about feed optimization. So at a very high level... Oh, go ahead.
Only because I don't know if you're sharing your screen. Did you share your screen?
Yes, I think I did. Can you see it too?
Maybe I just don't see it. It's okay. All right, I just want to double check you were sharing it. That's fine. Okay.
Let's see in the chat just to confirm. I can see it. Okay.
Okay, then you said you can see it. All right. Okay. I just wanted to make sure there. Sorry to interrupt you. I was just freaking out.
No worries. That would be a good thing to check. So getting into feed optimization. What is a feed? A feed is basically a collection of all of your products and all of your product data and attributes. It's at a high level, everything you would see on a product landing page. It has your title, your description, your image, your price, some of the other metadata attributes. And at a high level, what we mean by feed optimization is making sure that your product data is first and foremost clean. There's no rogue HTML, there's no weird things happening with strange characters, and that you've correctly mapped it to the specifications of each channel you're advertising on. So Google, for example, with Google Shopping has a very different specification than a channel like Amazon. The second thing that you want to make sure you're doing is making sure it's relevant. And this is the most important one. Making sure it's clean is kind of just the first step of what you would do, but relevancy is really how you can compete. And that means making sure that your product titles and other attributes are structured similar to the way that users search for them. So I'll give you guys an example. My go-to is, let's say I want to start running. I don't necessarily know what brand of shoes. I don't necessarily know what make of shoes I want. I probably know my shoe size, but my search term is going to be just running shoes. I'm going to do a little bit of time to do that research. And as I go farther down in that search funnel, I'm going to basically narrow it down to a brand, to a model, to a make, probably a color and design as well, So my search terms are going to change over time. They're going to go from something like running shoes to Nike running shoes to what you see over here, which is Nike Air Max running shoes, size 12 black. Now, if you look at Nike's product listing ad here on Google Shopping, they have pretty much every single one of those words present, except maybe the word black. And you might be wondering, is it a mistake? Is it an accident? It's definitely not. What they're trying to do is ensure that every one of the words that someone searches for is actually in their product data. And if we actually go and cost them that $2 or $3 per click, we're going to see that their website is a little bit different than what we just clicked on. Their website only has the words Nike Air Max 2017, but their actual title on Google had a few more words. It had the size, it had the noun, the word shoe in it. It even had the gender of it, and it had the same thing that it has on the landing page. So the question is, what's happening between Nike and Google? And as you probably guessed, the answer is feed optimization is happening in between. And the reason why Nike is doing this isn't just to show up on the actual results. They're doing it because they want to show up for the minimum bid possible. The two major components of, without delving into Google's machine learning algorithms, the two major components that dictate whether you'll show up or not are, one, your bid, because obviously Google is not doing this altruistically. They're trying to make some money. And the second component is your relevancy. Google doesn't want to have a bad experience for consumers where they will see products that are irrelevant to their search. So relevancy is huge with your product data. And that's what we mean by when we talk about feed optimization. So the first challenge you have with feed optimization is, how do you get your product data from your Shopify, your Volusion, your Magento, or even your custom store over to any channel you want to advertise with? So a lot of stores actually do this with a feed platform. Some stores do it without a feed platform. They send their product data directly through. There are a few reasons why you might want to be doing something in between, just like Nike is doing. The biggest one is all about relevancy. And that's kind of where we come in. So now that we know about feed optimization, I want to get into some pretty interesting feed management techniques that really allow you to get very, very granular on the bidding side. And this is something that we do very closely with Dwayne, where this is kind of the sweet intersection point of campaigns and feeds. So it's a very interesting way that you can get very, very granular in your bid segmentation and in kind of marrying your feed with your actual campaigns. So some of the things that we recommend doing, obviously we recommend setting this all up well before the holiday, meaning now, is doing A/B testing. It can be very interesting to see, is it better to say Nike Air Jordan shoes, or is it better to say Air Jordan shoes by Nike? And you'd be surprised that people might be far more likely to click on something when the brand is well known and it comes first versus when it's at the end of a product title. You can also A/B test images, which is kind of interesting because sometimes people like images from a different angle, less white space and padding around it. Obviously, as you can imagine, looking at the actual ads here, it's very visual based. Maybe not as much as a channel like Pinterest, which we'll be covering a little bit later, but it's very visual based. People obviously read the titles, but they also read it with their eyes first, just the product image. So you might want to test, is it better to have an image that is from left to right oriented or right to left? You can see here there are quite a few variations already. So that's an interesting one to test. You can also do some pretty interesting custom label segmentation. And I'll give you guys an example that I've seen with Nike shoes. So oftentimes when people set up bidding, it's based on brands and on category. So you might say, I want to bid this amount for this pair of Nikes that are in this category, which is shoes. But here's the problem you might run into. You might have one pair of Nike shoes that is $40 and one pair of Nike shoes that is $5,000 because it's autographed by Michael Jordan, for example. So that's a pretty big price discrepancy. Does it really make sense to have the same bid for both of those products? Probably not. So what we've seen is getting granular with bid segmentation with custom labels with price buckets. So you can say, for example, is this a low price item? Is it a medium? Is it a kind of mid-range, or is it high? And you can segment your bids accordingly there, so you can get more granular than you would if you were just dealing with things like brand and product category. Another interesting one is performance-based. So we will, Dwayne's going to be talking about ROAS, or return on ad spend, in a little bit, and CPA, or cost per acquisition. But these are really, really interesting ones where if you bring in performance data from a channel like Google Shopping back into your feed, you can make some very interesting determinations on products you might want to bid higher for, or products you might want to bid less for. And the other two are perhaps a little bit more obvious, but if an item is on sale and the word promotion is literally there, so you might want to be promoting it, it might make sense to bid higher for it. Also with margin, if a product has a higher margin, it usually makes more sense to bid more because there's more of a profitability margin to be had. So those are some of the interesting custom labels that we've seen that you should definitely set up well before Black Friday and that whole Cyber Monday weekend. But these are some great ones to play around with. And a good feed platform will let you set this up. If you only have 5 products and you're working off of a Google Sheets, you can still set this up manually. And I definitely recommend even doing it there, but it definitely lets you get more granular in how you actually set up your bid segmentation. Another thing that I definitely recommend doing well before the holidays is auditing your own feed. So we've obviously built a tool, as you guys can see here, called Feed Grader that can audit your entire feed. But you can also do this manually. You can download your feed to Excel. You can kind of look at it one by one by one, and look for issues with rogue HTML, titles that don't have brand, color, or size, or descriptive nouns and adjectives. And you can see, is it, for example, do we just have the words Air Jordan shoes? Do we not have the word Nike in there? Do we not even have a noun in there? So there's some things that you can fix up and kind of identify just by looking at it very manually. Obviously, when you've got tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of products, this approach can get very, very tiresome and annoying and painstaking to do. And that's why we created this tool that can easily run through your entire feed and look for some of the most common issues that we see. Some of these are actually really hard to identify even looking at it manually. For example, the very first one here, where you might have descriptions or titles that have repeated white space. Some of these are really hard to see, even if you look at it one by one, but we kind of show you the problem counts across your entire feed and how to fix these with data transformational rules. So this helps you easily identify missed opportunities and ways that you can improve your feed. And again, the time to be doing this is now. It is not several months from now, right before Thanksgiving and the whole holiday weekend starts. So these are all good things to be doing. And this kind of dives into the heart of how we think about feeds. We think about it in a way that there's no way that you would have a set it and forget it approach for campaigns. It'd be pretty illogical and crazy if you just set up your campaigns once and never look at them again. But oftentimes we find that that exact same thing happens with feeds, where they're set up once and they're never looked at again, which can be troublesome for several reasons, because a lot of retailers are adding new products constantly. As Dwayne said, if your product set is constantly changing on Amazon, it might not be a great fit. But you should definitely be looking at your product data either way, because you might have products that are not categorized properly, products that are missing those rich descriptive words, or people might be searching for them differently. Maybe people are not looking for shoes with the word sneakers. They might be looking for shoes with the word Keds, or basketball shoes, or something else that might be more descriptive. So it's always good to be auditing your own feed and doing it before it becomes too late. So that's one more thing we recommend doing as soon as you can. The other one is, how do you actually get ideas about how people are actually searching for your products? So this is a strategy that I'm sure Dwayne and I've definitely been doing for a while now for text ads, but it's one that has never really been done on the shopping side. So what we're doing here is we're comparing your actual Google Shopping feed to converted search terms from Google Analytics, Google AdWords, and we're running through what's called an n-gram analysis. We're looking at words that are in your search terms, but are not in your current feed titles. And this is a really interesting one because, as you can see from this example here, Our product title was just Nike Air Jordan Keds, size 10. But people weren't actually searching for the word Keds. They were searching for basketball sneakers. So this kind of tells you this is a great phrase to insert into your product title, maybe your description, and maybe even your product type that you supply to a channel like Google. So this data all comes from Google based on actual converted search terms from your data. So this is a really interesting way to identify a lot of missing words that can help you boost performance. We actually just came out with an interesting case study that we did with the Evasive Group and Barney's New York. We found a lot of really good optimizations for titles. And in some of the cases with products, it actually caused an increase of return on ad spend and an increase in impressions by almost 2x. So it's kind of crazy when you think about, just by missing one or two words, like the performance impact that can have on it. And in a similar fashion, you might identify words that you wouldn't have thought of, even if you're a product expert, because people search for these things in such different fashions. Some people might have the word V-neck if they're searching for a dress, or with pockets. These really rich descriptive words that do describe the dress but are not in your product data. The one thing to be aware of is Feedtelligence as we've created it, and even if you wanted to try to do this manually, with a bunch of Excel lookups and building your own Python script to do an n-gram analysis, you have to be using Google Analytics with eCommerce tracking to get your converted search term data out on a per SKU level. So just one thing to bear in mind. So that said, we've talked about feed optimization generally, but how do you choose from hundreds of different channels, and only a few of them are listed here? There are literally hundreds of channels just in the US alone before we even get into international. There's advertising channels, remarketing channels like Facebook, Facebook dynamic product ads. There's social channels like Pinterest, display channels, and marketplaces, of course, which is a huge emerging one. Channels like Amazon, Walmart, eBay, Jet, and even channels like Target Plus, which just launched their own marketplace. So how do you choose the best ones? At a very, very high level, you guys have all probably heard of Amazon. Whenever I think about Amazon, I think of these three metrics because they're pretty key. One is over 55% of product searches start on Amazon, which is a number that is making Google kind of worry, because if such a high percentage of these are starting on Amazon, Google's of course worried they're not going to go to Google to be doing these product searches. And I'll touch upon shortly how Google is addressing that and trying to compete with Amazon. The other one is 92% of people who start on Amazon purchase on Amazon. And I know I'm very, very guilty of that, one out of laziness, but also the convenience is just amazing. I have a Prime account and delivery is going to come within 1 to 2 days. Amazon is actually pushing out their one-day delivery offering to compete with Walmart. And the other one is 80% of sales are happening in the buy box. So if you're not in control of the buy box, you're missing out on the vast majority of potential sales. We've actually built out a very interesting thing with Amazon that is about error resolution. So we've seen that one of the things that precludes you from getting a lot of your products listed is specifically about items that have errors. And oftentimes people have a set it and forget it approach, and they never try to look at their product feed again. But when you have things like your value is Nike Corp, but Amazon's value is Nike, and they will just give you an error, we have an easy functionality that allows you to replace your value with Amazon's value to get your product live. And we've seen cases where Amazon errors can account for somewhere between 20 and 50% of all of your products that you can't even sell just because you've got these errors. And if you're not looking at this constantly, you're just not aware of it. So I definitely recommend doing this, at least checking your Amazon error reports in Seller Central somewhat regularly to identify some of these problems. It might be very manual to fix them, but it's usually worth it, especially if these are some of your best sellers. So the other thing, and this is kind of what I hinted at earlier, Google wants to compete with Amazon. They're not happy that everyone is going to Amazon and doing searches. So what they've launched is their own marketplace. They've basically launched their own Amazon competitor inside of Google Shopping. So as much as people say Amazon is becoming like Google, this is actually Google becoming like Amazon. where you can complete a full purchase process inside of Google using your stored credit card. There's some pretty interesting things where the commission rates are definitely lower than Amazon because Google's trying to incentivize you. And Google's trying to be very merchant friendly about this, where you get to keep the customer data. We've actually gotten a couple hundred clients live on Google Shopping Actions. We put out a very interesting case study that I definitely recommend you read just to kind of see like what the performance benefits can be. But at a high level, we've seen performance benefits for everyone who has done it. Usually there's less risk because it's commission based. It's not based on a CPC. So you don't have to spend money to actually make it. It's more of you only pay money when someone actually buys your product. So it's a very interesting channel that I recommend trying. But beyond, the big three, which are Google, Facebook, and Amazon, I also wanted to briefly touch upon some interesting new channels that we've seen clients find some great success in. So beyond these three, let's see what they are. The first one is Walmart. People still don't associate Walmart with the Walmart.com brand, but it's actually growing ridiculously quickly. They have over 100 million consumers shopping on Walmart.com every month, and it's growing at 40% year over year. They actually beat Amazon to the punch by rolling out free one-day delivery without any kind of Prime-like membership on over 200,000 products. I read just a couple of days ago that they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars kind of subsidizing this to build out this network before Amazon does. So Google hasn't launched anything like this with free one-day delivery at all. So it's really right now between Walmart and Amazon for this. And we've seen Walmart merchants doing pretty well because Walmart has a pretty big variety of products. They're also advertising for you. So what's kind of interesting is if you sell on Walmart, they will actually advertise on Google Shopping and will drive traffic to Walmart.com so that you can potentially get that purchase, even if you're the only one selling that product. So it's definitely an interesting channel to try. I would say if you're successful on Amazon, you're probably going to find maybe not the same degree of success on Walmart, but some element of that. So it's definitely a good one to try. It's probably the next largest marketplace in the US after Amazon and eBay. The other one, and this is a very interesting one. So Pinterest shopping has really been going hard this year ever since March. So it's still 3 months old. There used to be a pretty big requirement to get in, which has now for the most part been lifted. But we've seen that Pinterest has been one of the most successful channels if you have never done it before and if you are in certain verticals like fashion and apparel. So I'll just give you an example. So pinners, as they're called, are often browsing Pinterest and pinning items that they like. So Pinterest for the first time is kind of giving you this ability to upload your catalog or your feed, and it will automatically match it to any product that has been pinned before so that a user can click on it and not only see pricing information, like you see here in this Poshmark image, but you can actually go to the merchant's website and buy it all the way. We haven't seen any kind of marketplace capability yet, like a buy now button on Pinterest, but I would imagine that is probably going to come sometime soon. But it's a really interesting channel to try, especially when you're in a vertical that's very visually appealing and in alignment with Pinterest's core demographics, such as fashion and apparel. The other one that I want to mention is a really interesting one, and this has been rebranded a couple of times. This used to be Yahoo, then it became Oath, and now it is known as Verizon Media after a few acquisitions. For this one, I would say if you're experiencing success with Facebook, dynamic ads for remarketing, this is a great one to try. Verizon Media has quite a few very large brands and websites like Yahoo Sports, all the fantasy leagues, Yahoo Finance, the Huffington Post, a lot of famous tech blogs, some of which I read, that are part of this. And what's kind of interesting about this is you can basically do very interesting native dynamic remarketing ads with Verizon Media that are kind of similar to what you would do with Facebook, dynamic product ads, but it gives you more reach beyond just the Facebook and Instagram websites. So it's a really good one to try, and we've seen that it's not saturated at all. So the clients that we've seen run this are getting pretty good results. So definitely an interesting one to try. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dwayne, who's going to be talking about the campaign side of things and some really interesting things to try.
Cool. Thanks, Brian. That was a great talk. I think one point you made with the buy button on Pinterest, and I don't want to disagree with you, but I'm going to disagree with you on this. And I feel like it's just not going to happen because I feel like Facebook and Shopify, they've all been trying to make the social selling happen where I'll just shove a buy button in Twitter or on this platform and buy it in the platform. I don't know if people actually want to buy that way. It's been 2 or 3 attempts from Shopify. Facebook's done it a few times. And I feel it's one of those ideas where it's a great idea, but whether people actually want to do it or not is another question. Just because it's very different than how they shop right now. And it's also very different from just like an e-commerce perspective in general. So love your presentation. Don't know about the social selling and that buy button. But it'll be interesting to see sort of just like what happens in the future.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So got my screen going. You can all see it. Cool. So I want to talk a little bit about just moving beyond ROAS. So for those who don't know, for some reason, basically for every buck you spend, the money you make back would be your ROAS. So if you spend $1 and you get $3 back, you got a $3 ROAS, which is really good. Some agencies express this as a percentage. I think that is wrong. They should express it as a dollar amount because that is what the client is spending, i.e. dollars, and what they're getting back is dollars. They're not getting back percentages. And I think the reason ROAS is really important, though, is, when you get to the holidays, sometimes clients will say, oh, I want to maintain my 6 ROAS or my 7 ROAS or my 10 ROAS that you've had throughout the year. And I sometimes think for some brands, not all brands, but for some brands, it's actually a mistake because it's the holidays and it's the one time of year that tons of people are going to shop, tons of people are going to buy. And I'd rather go from a 7 ROAS to a 5 ROAS and double my revenue than maintain a ROAS of 7 throughout the whole Black holiday and into Christmas and make more money than just stick to a 7 ROAS, potentially make less money and have less customers to market to, right? Because if you acquire all these new customers at Christmas, you now have all these people you can remarket to both into Christmas but into next year, right? And Christmas, and especially Black Friday, is the time you want to think about growing your business as a whole. Because if someone's going to shop with you, the time they're going to do it is at Black Friday. They're not going to do it at like Easter. They're not going to do it at necessarily Valentine's Day or back to school. And they may buy those holidays, of course. But if someone's going to really shop with you and spend money, the time to do it is Christmas. And so don't get hung up whether you work in-house or at an agency where you've got to maintain that same ROAS. I'll take a hit on my ROAS if it means more money and more people in our remarketing list that we can remarket to throughout the following year. I think a lot of clients make the mistake of just trying to maintain that ROAS, and that's where they have the issue of, revenue is not as much this year as it was last year, or our competition is eating our lunch and our market share. So if you're going to get your feeds ready for the holidays, which obviously you are, if you're talking with your client or talking with your boss, talk about ROAS. Talk about like what you had last year, what you have throughout the year, where do you really want to sit this year? Because if you can go down 1 or 2 points in ROAS and make more money, that is a very, very powerful business proposition. Because at the end of the day, people only care about the bottom line and how much revenue you brought in. Or at least they should, right? And so that's what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about sort of prospecting and lifting up your revenue as a whole. But the other flip side of that is really just building your brand, right? You don't build brands through just 1 campaign or 2 campaigns. You build brands through consistent marketing. And if you can lower your ROAS, build your brand as a whole, and make more money in the long run, then you've done a great service to your brand. So I want to talk a little bit about data, right? We talk a lot about preparing for your feed and preparing for the holidays. And I think the other thing we need to think about is how do you decide, what you're going to sell at the holidays? How are you going to decide where you're going to spend your money? How are you going to spend your money? I think there's a few different ways you can look at this. So the obvious place is go to Google Analytics and look at what you've done for the last 2 years, the last 3 years, right? What sold last year? What sold the year before that? What sold in 2016? Look for trends. And, maybe a product somebody says they don't want to sell because they don't think it sells actually sells really well. And you don't notice it sells really well because it doesn't sell millions of units. It only sells hundreds of thousands of units. But those hundreds of thousands of units are really profitable. And so when we work with clients, we always talk about, let's go look at what's happened in the last 2 years, what's been selling, what's not been selling. For one of our clients, they're a toy client. They sell some really bougie-ass toys, which are like $100 a piece, toys I would have not had as a kid. And some of their toys sells really well throughout the year. Some of their toys always sells really well at Christmas time. And so understanding what product sells at Christmas, but not throughout the rest of the year, or understanding what product sells only at Christmas time is going to help you figure out where you should spend your time and where you should spend your money as a whole. And there's a chat question. Okay, that was just you, Brian. I was like, oh, someone had a question.
Yep, just me.
Just you. So after you've looked at your Google Analytics data, the other place I like to go to is Facebook Analytics. Now, I will be the first to admit that I should definitely spend more time on my Facebook Analytics than I currently do. But I think there's some really interesting things in Facebook Analytics. Like one of the areas is top referred domains. So if you go in, you say you want to look at your customer journey, you pick top referred domains, and then you pick an event. So you can pick like content view, purchase view, add to cart. One of the things that spits back to you is what people coming from websites have helped contribute revenue value to your website you're selling for. So for our toy client, there's this site called Workspace for Children. We noticed that there's potentially a lot of people who come from that site who eventually buy on their sites. And so we look at the client and go, well, if this site is giving us good traffic, are there ways for us to work with the site? It may not be a shopping campaign, but can we do a display buy? Can we do email marketing? So using your Facebook Analytics to figure out where does your community spend their time online, but also where else can you just advertise in general to make more money? Even just looking below that, there's like this babylist.st that brought in revenue. So this is a great way, I think, to figure out what preferred traffic is driving revenue and what are places you may not have thought of or don't know about because maybe you don't have domain expertise. If you look at an agency and you've got like a dozen clients, or even if you work in-house and you've got domain expertise, it's hard in 2019 to keep track of every website, every platform, every piece of technology. And so just going in your Facebook Analytics looking for other opportunities is a great way to see what else you can do. So the last screen looked at it from a view content. If I looked at the same report, but just looking at people who've actually added to the shopping cart, which is obviously more valuable, I see babylist.com come up, which I think is owned by P&G or Johnson & Johnson, one of those big brands. This is a great place to say, okay, well, if you know people coming from this site are going to buy and have the propensity to buy, do we want to do a buy on this website? I think babylist.com, when we looked at that for a client, it was like $10,000 or something like that, which isn't a lot of money in of itself, but for what we wanted to do was kind of a lot of money. So Facebook Analytics, once you've had it set up, is a great place to just look and sort of see what else and what other opportunities exist for your brand. And obviously, it's better if you've got more data than less. If you work at a startup that's only been around for a year, you probably won't have tons of data in Facebook Analytics. But if you've been around for 2 or 3 years, you'll definitely have some data in there. So the other place we like to look is Quantcast. So for those who don't know, Quantcast is basically a display vendor. I think sometimes they also say they're a programmatic vendor. And much like Facebook and all of the other places, they have a pixel. So if you grab the pixel for free and sign up for an account and slap it on your website, you will get back tons of really, really cool data. So one of the pieces of data you get, which is very similar to Google Analytics, is you start to get data based on people coming to your website. What is their gender? What is their age? Do they have kids? What is potentially their ethnicity or their education level, the household income? And what I like about this demographic data is that if you take this data and you compare it to Google Analytics data, how well do those two match up, right? Are they in sync? Is there a big discrepancy? Why is there a big discrepancy? I love Google. I thank Google exists because it allowed me to have a job and move around the world and live in Australia and the UK, but I don't take any one platform's data as gospel, right? I take every piece of data as a grain of salt. So being able to use Quantcast and the Pixel to sort of see where there's discrepancies or similarities in my data between Google Analytics and Quantcast, I think is a powerful way to figure out other places, people, types of people, segments of the market that we haven't thought about going after because we didn't think they'd be a good customer. Some of the other data you can get is shopping interest data. So a lot of this data is based on anonymized data from like MasterCard and other places that Quantcast has access to that they layer on top of their Pixel. So everything from children's interests to seasonality to who you might vote for politically to how you shop online to like, do you own a car or not own a car? All these sort of psychographic data, people's opinions, people's interests are really powerful when you think about if I could take all these interests and start using them in my Facebook campaigns or how I target people on other platforms, it definitely gives you some really great ideas of how you're going to target people on Facebook or Instagram over the holiday season. So if you've never used Quantcast and you don't want to spend money with them, that's totally cool, but you can totally grab a free pixel and use it as a way to have another place to look at your demographic data. So the other thing, doesn't always work for every industry, but we have 2 toy clients. So everything from trade publications and industry associations. We all probably work in marketing here. So, the IABC puts out a lot of reports. And I think it's great to sort of use trade publications and industry associations to sort of see what trends are happening within the members of those associations or trade groups. You don't necessarily have to agree with the data. You don't have to use the data. But I think it's interesting to get some outside points of view, because I know when I've worked in-house, sometimes the challenge is you can get tunnel vision and you sort of miss out on opportunities that you didn't know existed because you're just working so hard to keep up with the amount of work that you have done. So I'd totally say checking out trade publications and industry associations are a place to look that not a lot of people in the industry look at. They kind of just look at the IABC or eMarketer. But this is a place that you don't want to miss if you want to go beyond just the average places to look for data. And as I said a second ago, I take all of this with a grain of salt. No ad platform is perfect. No ad platform has 100% accuracy in their data. And the more places you have data where you can compare, the better off you'll be for the holiday season. This holiday season is going to be very different than the last few holiday seasons, because when you look at the last couple holiday seasons, mobile shopping has become a lot bigger, where it surpassed desktop shopping, which, we've been talking about the year of mobile for the last decade. And it's only in the last 2 years that's really happened. We're seeing more e-commerce transactions happen on a mobile device than you do on a desktop. And I think this year we're going to see even more people buy a mobile device than they have in the past. And so making sure that you target people where they are, when they are, having your site and feed ready for a mobile experience is going to make you a better marketer and help you bring in more money during the 2019 season. And then the last place, and Brian talked about this a little bit, we don't do a lot of testing over the holidays. But one thing I think I would say to that, and one sort of way I would tweak that is, let's say you've never done Pinterest before, right? You've never done Pinterest. Your team is thinking about it. I think Pinterest is a great platform you could test. You take 5% of your budget, 10% of your budget, and you test out a platform like Pinterest because it's really small, right? Pinterest has got 275,000 million people, half of that being in America. If you take a small part of your budget and test it, you could probably see if there is a causation or correlation of you driving more sales over the holidays versus you testing out something like a Quantcast or a bigger platform where you need to spend lots of money. So we wouldn't necessarily do any hardcore testing over the holidays, but I think testing out a small platform you've not done before as an organization is a great time to do it, because if you can make it work during the holidays, you probably can make it work during the non-holiday season as well. And there's other places you can do everything from ShareSale, which is an affiliate site, other affiliates if you work with affiliates individually, and be prepared to be a little bit uncomfortable over these holidays, because I really think this holiday is going to be different outside of the fact that a lot of things we know are going to be very similar. A lot of things we don't know are going to be very different. So the last part of my talk is really about just finding your community and figuring out where they exist online. And this is probably not going to be the answer you think it's going to be, because we're all human, right? I often think when I do marketing and I launch a campaign or whatever it is for a client, I often think, do I want to get this experience, right? And so as you prepare for the holidays, I want you to think about, if I was to get this campaign, if I was to get this marketing message, would I be happy with it as just a normal human being, as a consumer? Take off your marketing hat, put on your Joe, Jim, or Vinny, who just lives in Vancouver or Denver, or other places they may live. So always remember that you're marketing to people and you're not just views or users in GA. We're actually people, and make sure that the experience you give them is the best experience possible. And if you give them the best experience possible, it makes it a lot easier for you to send them an email or send them, an IM during intercom messages and ask them, hey, where do you spend your time online? What do you do online? I think asking your customers how they spend their own time is really valuable. We often don't spend enough time asking our customers how they spend their time and where they spend their time. We often just use generic data from eMarketer or IABC, or make assumptions on some survey we ran 3 years ago. And so if you're going to prepare for this holiday season, one of the things I think you should do, whether you work in-house, you work in an agency, is talk with your brand and talk with your brand's customers to figure out how they spend their time and where they spend their time. Because they might bring up a website or a forum that you've never heard of, or you didn't know existed, that could be a great place to run campaigns, but you need to know it exists. And the only way you're going to know it exists is if you actually talk to them. If you can't email them for some reason, because maybe you live in a big organization, or maybe you work at an agency and your client's that's not going to happen. The other thing we like to do is use Hotjar. So Hotjar is sort of like a CRO survey tool. And so we use it a lot to run like polls and surveys to ask questions of like, why did you come to this brand? Or why did you come to this landing page? What would you expected? Why are you going to, buy us versus Shopify, or buy our toy versus some other toy? And using Hotjar as a way to get to talk to your customers and ask them questions. And you don't ask them tons of questions. You usually ask anywhere from 3 to 5 questions at any one survey. But using Hotjar as a way to do that has allowed us just to find out things we wouldn't have gotten to know if we didn't ask them in the first place. One of our clients competes with Shopify, and the difference between like why people pick Shopify and why people don't pick Shopify is super fascinating. Talking to parents using Hotjar and finding out, why they bought that toy versus another toy, how and why they spend their time on YouTube, not just the time they spend when their child's on YouTube, but how do they spend their time on YouTube? Because a kid may say they want a toy, but you still have to convince the parent to buy the toy. So if you don't use Hotjar, I highly recommend it. It's a great tool. The pricing is really affordable. And it's a great way to talk to clients, talk to customers if you don't have your clients, or brands okay to talk to customers directly. So there was another slide, and for some reason it's not loading, and I don't know why. Maybe it will let me refresh. There we go. So that's the end of our presentation. So if anybody has any questions, me and Brian are going to be around for a few more minutes. We're happy to answer any questions you have. If there's a slide you want us to go back to, let us know. Obviously, Feedonomics also offers a free feed on it. So if you think your shopping feed could be better or needs improvement, or you just want to get their opinion, I highly recommend it. We've done it for all our clients. We've had it happen for our friends who think their feed is amazing, and there are things that Brian and his awesome team have found the way they have found to make the feed better. So don't be shy to reach out. It's totally free. There's no sales obligation. You get back a really nice report. It's really detailed. And you just want to make sure your feed is ready for the holidays, because like 80% of your work is your shopping feed. And if that's not in great shape, it doesn't matter anything you do after that. You're just going to probably have a really bad shopping campaign in general. Also, if you want sort of like an account on it done, send me an email as well. We can talk about, where can you make improvements in like your Facebook or your Google or your Pinterest. We've got a couple clients on Pinterest. And now we'll open the floor up to any Q&A if anyone has any questions.
Awesome. I'm seeing one from Jeff. And this looks to be one for you, Dwayne. What are your favorite Google Shopping campaign structures?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think there's like one structure. It depends on like what the client sells. So we have 2 toy clients. One sells their own products, and then one sells, I guess you would say like third-party products. They sell toys of other brands. And so our structures for those are very different. Whereas the toy client that sells other brands, we have it broken down by brand. So we have 4 different tiers. Yeah, we have 4 different tiers. In each tier, there's different brands depending on like which brands we want to put more spend towards. We know sell consistently throughout the year. And then from there, we've got like obviously brand campaign. We've got a remarketing campaign. We have a post-purchase campaign because we find we can upsell a lot of the clients who buy these $100 toys for their kids. So that's kind of like one structure, is just breaking things out by brand. Our other structure for some clients is usually breaking things by like product category, product type. So the client who makes their own toys, we might break it down by like clothes and like products and toys and just all the different categories they have. And then still have for them a sweeper campaign that's just all products, where if it's a super generic search, but we don't know the intent behind the search, we want that to fall into that all products campaign. We also have all products broken out by device. And then again, similar to the other client, we have like brand campaign, obviously, and we have like a marketing campaign. We also have a post-purchase campaign, so we can upsell people. So it really just depends on like what the client's selling and what they're not selling. Our other client who sells their own clothes that they make themselves, we have things broken down by just like tops versus jackets versus pants bottoms versus dresses. And then again, we have a brand campaign and a remarketing campaign. So we kind of just look at like what the client sells and how they've had things structured currently. And we also look at just like what's been selling in the past. Unless it's a net new client that's launched like yesterday, there's going to be data, whether it's shopping data or even just sales data in Google Analytics. So we'll look at like what's selling, how do people search, like we'll look at site search data to see how someone's searching the website for product and kind of understand like if people are searching by XYZ, then let's use that as a way to break out. So for our toy client, we knew that people search for the toys by the brand name of the toy and what the toy was. So breaking up by brand made sense because we wanted to like have all the toy brand searches under that campaign. So it really just depends, Jeff, on like what the client sells, and there's no like right or wrong way. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, it's a great summary. The only thing I would add to that, because those are probably the most common ways that I see it done well. The only thing to add on to that is when you see those weird edge cases where you've got, the exact same brand, the same category, but a very different price, or one is a bestseller, for example, that would be a good place to use custom labels. And you can use custom labels not just on Google Shopping. A lot of people don't realize it, but you can actually use it on Facebook and Instagram as well. So that's a great place to use it as well, whether it's a bestseller bucket or whether it's a clearance bucket, a sale bucket, a seasonal bucket, or even just price buckets. Those are pretty good ways to just get extra granularity in bidding and just trying to understand like which products are selling and why. But yeah, that's a great summary of the best ways that I would segment campaigns as well and structure them.
Yeah, I mean, we only generally do the price bucket if there's like a huge price disparity between clients' prices. Like our clothing client in New York, all their prices are in like the 150, 200 range. So doing price buckets didn't make sense. Whereas a toy client's got everything from a $50 toy all the way to, there's a couple toys in the $500, $600 range. So price buckets made sense there. We always do the sales one because every client has a sale at some point. Color, I think, is one thing you didn't mention in your custom label topic. So sometimes we'll do color for some clients if there's a lot of color variance in there. So definitely custom labels are a great way to help sort of just funnel product and figure out how you're going to structure things and just make sure you've got the best campaign possible and the best campaign structure possible.
Definitely.
Brian, is there anything you didn't talk about that you want to talk about? Like, is there anything you felt like as you're going through your presentation, oh, I wish I had said that about like just like shopping campaigns preparing for the holidays?
Yeah, I would. The only thing that I didn't really get a chance to talk about, and maybe what a few of you guys who are listening in are wondering about too, is the new smart shopping campaigns. So, Dwayne, I don't know if you've had any experience with it or anything around that front, but just curious to know, your thoughts on it, because I've played around with it probably like a year ago when they first launched it. Did not get the best results, but curious to know what you think about that.
Yeah, we tried it the other day actually for a client, and the results were not. The results were not as great as I thought they would be. We eventually just turned it off and went back to manual. We don't know if maybe we could have used more data potentially in our shopping campaigns with this client, and maybe that would have helped perform better. So we said, let's pause it for now. We'll revisit it, after the holidays and early next year, maybe Q1 in February. Most people, I think, when they hear them talk about shopping, it's either it was a fantastic failure or it's working great, but they lack the ability to get volume. Like it just, let's say you're getting 10,000, clicks and sales a month, you go to start shopping, you might only get like 5,000. So your revenue is increasing, but maybe you're not seeing as much search volume. So there's nothing for you to scale. So I've heard scale is an issue with some people and friends who've done smart shopping. I think it's anything Google, anytime Google labels something that's the word smart, I'm like, it's probably not the smartest thing in the world. Like smart shopping, smart goals, smart display. I'm like, it sounds great in theory, but in reality, half the time the stuff is not as well thought out as it could be, I think, because sometimes I think the people who make the product aren't always the same people who use the product. Like they don't use their own product. They just like launch things and this sounds great. Well, have less people on this product because it's all automated. But I'm like, automation's not going to save us if you haven't thought about like how we actually use it as marketers when we're in the trenches doing stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And I know like Google itself often says that it needs a couple weeks worth of data to actually start, working. And my guess is that Google has launched this really for very small merchants who would otherwise just be completely unable to manage their campaigns at all. And I guess part of the issue is that to use and best leverage these machine learning algorithms, you need a lot of data. And so these small merchants are just not going to accrue enough data. So it's almost like the very people that we're mostly trying to help are not going to be helped. But because we're talking about, getting everything in line for the holiday season, I think it's important to realize too, like starting this on Thanksgiving, if you were going to try a smart shopping campaign, is probably not the best window to actually get some decent data for. Even if you want to benchmark it year over year, it's probably not going to be great because the competitive landscape has probably changed completely. Mobile is overtaking desktop, so a lot of things are not going to be the same. If you were going to do that, you probably want to choose a time that's not with crazy variance like the holiday time to actually run this test. And I know Google has been trying to get smarter around some of the not just the targeting for ROAS targeting, but also for some of the variances that might account for, you know, accelerated versus having some more staggered bidding actually set up. So I know that they are trying to address some of those initial complaints that I've seen with the first version, but it's definitely an interesting thing, and I'm kind of curious to see where Google takes it to solve some of those problems. But for right now, it does seem to me that it's really oriented towards really small merchants, and it doesn't seem like it's getting the best results there. That's my sense of it.
No, I agree. I think it's, if you look at like DSA and dynamic search ad campaigns, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, they're definitely not as good as back then as they are now. It's taken a few years for Google to figure out like where there are flaws in the algorithm and how it works. And so I'm sure smart shopping will get better, you know, next year in 2021, but it's definitely not a use case where you set it up, you turn it on, and it does wonders for you, you know, even if you've got the data back there. Well, I was going to say, if nobody else has any questions, we're going to end the webinar right now. I thank everyone for showing up and sticking around. Obviously, if you have questions and you want to get a feed audit, email Brian. He's happy to chat with you and connect you with his team. And if you want to count on it, happy to help that as well. Thanks for attending again, and have a great day, everyone.